Today is my day. No one will get in my way. I am here on purpose. I have a purpose. All things. I will no longer stay at this mountain. I'm done losing. I will no longer play second place. And when you make that one decision, I believe that the God we serve will move heaven and hell to help you win. And I believe that a lot of you in here today, you could create your own miracle in your life tonight.
God, that made me a little tingly. That was a good one.
Woo! All right. What's going on, fam? This is Coach JC, and you are listening or watching the Win All Day podcast show. And I'm so stoked today. I had to bring him on the screen right now just so you can see his good looks. So I brought him on early. But before I introduce our special guest, you guys are in for such a treat today, and I'm super excited. But if you are a frequent viewer or listener, then you know we kick every show off with our Win All Day winning confession. We believe in the power of your words. And if it's your first time tuning in, just repeat after me. Today is my day. Nothing will get in my way of me being the best version of me. I am here on purpose. I have a purpose. I am strong. I am passionate. I am fearless. I choose faith. I was born a winner. I will win and win all day. Yes, you were born a winner, and you will win and win even more in life after today's show. Man, I'm super stoked. And here today on the Win All Day podcast show, we have my friend, an amazing entrepreneur, and our special guest. More importantly than an amazing entrepreneur, my friend is an amazing, beautiful human being that is changing the trajectory of so many people's lives. And he's on the screen right now, and I want to welcome the man, the myth, the legend, the one and only, the creator of the Billionaire Code, and Mr. Alex Charfen. What's up, my guy?
Dude, JC, thanks so much for having me, man. I was driving home to get on this podcast, and I'm like, what do I possibly do to match JC's energy? And then I just realized, I'll be here with you. I'm not going to match it. There's no way. Not even going to try.
You know what's so funny about that, man? And I'm just being transparent. And I'm going to introduce you in a second. I want you to introduce yourself. But it's funny you said that because, you know, the first time I ever saw you speak was at a ClickFunnels event with Russell Brunson. And the thing that attracted me, and I felt like I had to get in your program, had to get to know you, was your energy you had on stage. But it didn't stop there. It was the energy you had on stage. And I'm a big observant of people, man. I don't just talk to talk. I watch a lot. And then I try to connect with people that I think I could help win and vice versa. And I watched you as you got off stage, and your energy that was on stage, you brought to the back of the room, and then in the lobby on your way to the restroom. I watched you go to I didn't watch you in the restroom, but I watched you that got weird. I watched you on the way to the restroom in the hallway as people, after they heard you speak, wanted to talk to you. They knew your podcast. And I was so intrigued with how you stopped. You made sure to engage every human being. You made eye contact, and the passion and the intensity that I watched you in the hallway interact with people from all walks of life, man. And I said that in the most respectful manner. People that look different than you. You didn't know their social status. You had no idea the money they made. And you showed every individual in that hallway the same amount of intention in a very passionate, intimate, intense way, bro. And I'm just being honest with you, that's what attracted me to you and your program more than anything. I get goosebumps today thinking about it because a lot of people don't have that, especially in your position. So you talk about energy. That's the number one reason that me and you are on this call today is to the energy that you brought to that stage, but most importantly, the energy you brought when you were off that stage, my man.
Thanks, JC. You know, it's funny that you bring that up. So I always tell people when I'm on stage with a 5,000 person audience, I'm the most comfortable person in the world. But when I have to walk off the stage and be like in the mix of the audience, I get uncomfortable. You know, I'm not great in social situations. I'm not great with small talk. I mean, it's always been hard for me to do that from the stage to off the stage, but I know exactly what you're talking about. I know exactly the event you were talking about. I actually, about 3 years ago, started telling event organizers, I don't walk off the back of the stage anymore. I'm gonna go right out the front. It doesn't matter when I speak. I'm always gonna go out the front because here's what I know. There's usually a few people who want to connect in some way and that have been touched by something that I've said, and they need a second, or they need a question answered, or they want 10 seconds of proximity, or they want to just be able to say thank you. And I realized that regardless of how uncomfortable I am in those situations, that if I go out and I just trust the universe and trust myself and trust that I'm going to be okay, that I connect with people in this profound way. And some of the most intense moments in my entire life have been walking off the stage and having somebody walk up and talk to me. In 2010, while Katie and I were earning these Inc. 500 awards, we were selling a product in the foreclosure industry, in the real estate industry. And I remember speaking at this event. It was a big event, got a huge standing ovation, like all the energy, everything was going crazy. People were really like excited about it. And I was speaking on foreclosure, and I told my story, Katie and my story of going through foreclosure, of losing our home, of going bankrupt, that like you can build back and you can come back. And I walked off the stage, and there was a crowd of realtors there that wanted to like talk and take pictures, and a couple of them wanted me to sign stuff. And it was the weirdest thing. At some point I looked up and the crowd kind of parted, and there was a guy standing like in between people, and he wasn't dressed very well, and his hair was kind of messed up. And he just walked right up to me and hugged me, but threw his arms around me to where you could hear it, like hear him slapping on my back. And I'm like, what is happening? And he said, I want you to know, on stage, you said you saved a lot of people from foreclosure. I want you to know today you saved somebody from a lot more. And he walked away. And I had this like feeling like, man, I think I know what that guy's talking about, and he wasn't talking about saving you from like a financial issue or something. He was like, this changed what was going on in his life. And maybe he wasn't going to check out, and he was before that presentation. And from that point forward, I've walked off the front of the stage because I feel like I have a responsibility to.
Wow, man. I get emotional hearing that, because, I think the words that come to me, Alex, is, 2 words: you care. And that comes down to empathy and compassion. I've listened to some of your podcasts. I've listened to a lot of your podcasts. And then obviously went through your course with one of our companies, and I'll share a little about that in a little. But when you're speaking about stories, and you're speaking about human beings, and I'll never forget, there was one, I don't remember exact dialogue of the story, but it was in your leadership skills, and you were leading a company, and you said your way to lead was more hard-nosed. People were afraid of you, and they were scared of you, and you led that way. And I'll never forget that. I listened to it probably 3 or 4 times over, just to again, the resonation that I had with you when I listened to that was, man, you were broken. Like, I heard you kind of almost tearing up on the call, and it was a recorded call, and you were just, man, it was a heart of compassion, empathy for people. And this podcast is all about winning all day. It's not about winning or losing. It's about helping people really just be the best version of them, maximize their God-given talents and abilities. And what you just said is crucial. Like, we have no idea every single day the people we cross paths with on a Zoom call, at a grocery store, at a gas station, at a conference, when you speak on stage. The conviction that you speak with, I think, is an absolute game changer. And is your product good? Yes, it's great. But I think the reason that you're having the success you are is because of the compassion, empathy you have for people, not only your team, but also people from all walks of life, irrelevant of their color, irrelevant of where they come from, irrelevant of their belief system. Man, I just watch how you care for people. And there's not a lot of people that have that. And that's one of the things that attracted me, because that's how I am. So, man, I commend you for that, brother. That you can lead any team. I believe as an entrepreneur, you can be anything you want to be in life when you have a heart of compassion, empathy for people. And I truly feel like you live a life to give, man.
JC, it wasn't always like that. I think it's important to share that it wasn't always like that, because I don't want anyone to think that like this is just how I came out and this is how I've always been, and like to be this way, you just have to come out this way and be this way. When I was younger, I ran businesses when I was younger, and I was also the kid that was different and bullied and had a lot of challenges in school, didn't have a lot of friends. And so when I ran businesses when I was younger, I didn't understand the reality behind business. And here's my reality behind business. There is only so much you can do as an entrepreneur on yourself. So your entire ability to run a business, usually over about $1 million, is your ability to relate to, build a team around, and work with people. And when I was younger, I ran a company that did $250 million in sales. We were a multi-million-dollar revenue organization, but we were responsible for a massive amount of sales. And I saw people as a necessary evil. It's embarrassing to say this right now. It really is. But like my first decade in business was fighting with people and putting rules in place and challenging people and yelling at people and like walking into the office and making sure everybody was scared and intimidated of me, and like a dictatorial type of leadership style. And in my 20s, I started reading about human beings a lot more than I had before. I started reading about relationships and psychology and how things worked and how we all went together. And then I came across empathy. And I started studying empathy and what it means to have empathy and what it means to see the world from somebody else's perspective. And I remember how confronting it was to study empathy and shame and blame and the emotions that come with it. And then to realize how I'd spent a decade managing people in a way that was so completely not empathetic, in a way that created and caused shame and blame on a daily basis, in a way that was totally destructive. And I went through this shift of like realizing, and this is the big shift. You know, I used to think that you could grow an amazing business if you were an amazing entrepreneur. And today I know with conviction, the only way you grow an amazing business is you convince amazing people to go with you. Come on. And it doesn't go any other way than that. And so it wasn't always that way. I don't want anyone thinking that this is just how I always was, because I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs who had tough childhoods, who didn't get a lot of loving care, that maybe were neglected, maybe had some abusive childhood, maybe were bullied like I was, maybe had some challenges and didn't have that level of empathy. And I want anyone who doesn't to know you can develop it.
That's powerful. Cause I'm glad you shared that, and I don't know why we're going this direction. Obviously on the Win All Day podcast, man, we don't script anything out, but I really believe, man, like, I'm just a led person, man. I'm led by my spirit. And right now where we're at, if you're listening to this podcast, whenever you're listening to it, right now we are just coming through still the COVID, the coronavirus. Now you're seeing this whole race issue going on in our country. And I think that's a word that was so timely at this time, that you can train and you can learn to be an empathetic person. And I was brought up that way. I was brought up extremely, extremely poor. We lacked a lot, but my mom always gave. And I watched this, and we always gave. We didn't have a car, but she was giving. We didn't have groceries. We visited local food pantries, but she was giving. And so I adopted at a young age. There's no way I could turn it off. I cry at chick flicks, man. My wife thinks I'm crazy. I'm an emotional dude. Like, if I see people hurting, like, it's funny because like this whole situation with homeless people, like, there's people that in the nation say, well, don't give them a dime. Don't give them something. You're enabling them. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to give them, but I'm never going to pass a homeless person without giving them something. Maybe it's a word. Maybe it's a hug. Maybe it's $1. I just can't turn it off. If somebody's broken, I will stop anything I'm doing at any time, and I will put my own agenda aside to help that person, period. And the fact that you just said you could train that, you can learn how to be empathetic, I think it's an absolute game changer. And you're not just saying that, you did it. Because now I watch you lead your team, and you lead an amazing team. You've taught other entrepreneurs how to be empathetic and shift their leadership style to actually not only lead a great team, but bring them peace of mind as leaders.
Yeah. And it's more than that, JC. It's more than that. It's like, if you lead a team through empathy, and you lead a team through growing yourself personally, and you have the tough conversations, and you are transparent and real about what you need, that's where you really grow as a human being and as an entrepreneur. I think one of the hardest things for us as entrepreneurs is to admit vulnerability, is to say like, hey, I need help and I'm not very good at this and I have a tough time with this. And it's interesting. In my 20s, I'm 47. And I've run businesses my whole life. I started when I was, before I was 10. I sold my first business at 20. Well, I sold my first business at 17, but I kind of had to sell that one. And I sold my second one at 21 years old. So I've never, other than a job as a waiter and a short stint in a bank, and then a buyout that I did when I sold one company, I've always been an entrepreneur. And, the reality about who we are is that if once we realize that what we really want is to make things happen in the world, what we really want is to create, to move forward, I call it momentum. I think every entrepreneur in the world lives for the state of momentum, lives for that place where you're making things happen, where you're changing the world, where you're making a new status quo, you're making things, move forward, and you're evolving humanity. And I think one of the biggest challenges for us is that we don't realize that so much of gaining that momentum is understanding the people around us and empathizing with the people around us and getting closer to the people around us. And here's what's amazing, man. When I was younger, I ran multi-million-dollar businesses that I was afraid of. I'm not kidding. Let's get real. Let's be very, very blunt. I was scared of my team when I was a kid. I used to go down to Argentina where my biggest office was, and walking in, I remember standing outside and taking deep breaths and thinking you got this, man. Nothing's going to happen. You're going to be okay. That was my team I was going into, and I was terrified. And it felt like a prize fight. I walked in there like it was a prize fight.
Wow.
When I was 30 something, when we were running this business, it was the first time where I was in a group meeting. There was probably 7 or 8 of us, and somebody handed me a sheet of paper and said, "Hey, read this for everybody." And they handed it to me. It was written in cursive. And it was the first time in my entire life I said in front of anybody I worked with, I said, "Hey man, I can't read this. I'm dyslexic and I can't read cursive. Can you read it?" And I handed it back to him, and I swear, my heart almost jumped out of my chest. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I just did that. Everybody's going to think I'm an idiot. Nobody's going to listen to me. And you know what happened? Nothing. The guy on my team took it, read it, and then we went right back to the meeting. And I'm like, holy crap, what just happened? Nobody even cared. Then a few days later, somebody had said something and said, "Oh, Alex is dyslexic. Let's make sure he can read that." And now I'm like, oh my gosh. So I said it one time, and now the team's watching out for me and has my back. And that moment of almost accidental vulnerability kicked open a world where I don't hide anything anymore. I feel like here's the equation I saw when I was a kid. Never let them see you sweat or the business won't grow. Now at 47, don't ever hide anything from your team, or it's going to become a hand grenade later on.
Wow. So, there's so many powerful things you said there, but I do want to transition over to that because I think there are people listening right now and they say, how did you make that mindset shift, right? You ran these businesses, but not only studying empathy, but what were a few of the other mindset shifts you had to make? I heard you say something there about belief and knowing who you are. And that's one of the things I respect about you is you're very true to who you are. I think a lot of leaders, they're trying to be this person, and they want to be Donald Trump, and they want to be Bill Gates, and they try to fit into this mold. And I watch and I'm like, man, I think the greatest belief you could ever have, besides a belief in a creator, is a belief in you, who you were born to be, who you are, and who you can become. If you're twisted on your identity, man, you can't lead people. You can't lead yourself. So what's the mindset shift you made? Because now you operate with such a relaxing, peaceful. I'm not saying you're not strategic and you don't run a business, because we'll get into that. It's crazy systems and it's awesome, but you never look stressed. As much as you do and as much as you've done, you have this calmness to you. There's not a weight on you as an entrepreneur or CEO. You're always happy. You're joyful. You have a peace. You have a swag. And I think it comes from knowing who you are, what you stand for, what you're about. How'd you make that mindset shift, man?
You know what, man? Because this is you and we're friends, I'm just going to I'm not going to give you the pretty answer. I'll give you the real one. 26 years ago, I started trauma therapy. When I was younger, I had a really hard time growing up. And I think a lot of the attitude with which I ran businesses in my 20s, a lot of the attitude with which I confronted I wanted to say with which I dealt with people. And did you hear what I just said? With which I confronted people. That's really dealing with me in my 20s was a confrontation no matter what. And I started going to EMDR therapy when I was 26, when I got out of a bad relationship. And I didn't tell anybody for 6 years. So I started doing EMDR, and almost immediately it started shifting things. It shifted things so much that the business I was in, I didn't want to be in anymore. I wasn't that person anymore. I was in a very traumatic and high pressure and high stress and alcohol driven and partying driven environment as an international consultant. And the more I did trauma therapy, the more I wanted to let go of that. And going to EMDR and understanding here's how it worked for me. Understanding the trauma I had been through and creating empathy for myself allowed me to have empathy for other people. And up until then, at 26, I know now I was blaming myself for what happened when I was a child. I was ashamed of being picked on. I was ashamed of being the weird kid in class.
Wow.
I was ashamed of not being like as fit as everybody else and being the fat kid and the short kid. And I carried tons of shame. And by going to therapy and talking and going specifically EMDR therapy and offloading trauma, it allowed me to have love for myself, which allowed me to then empathize with other people. But it's been a journey, man. It's been 26 years of not constant, but definitely on off a tremendous amount of personal work and offloading and understanding and processing and really stepping into who I am now.
Man, that's so powerful. I know that's helping a listener or viewer right now. And it never ends. Like you're still doing that self-care and you're still working on development and physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. But I think for the listener,
my next call's with my EMDR therapist. No joke.
Well, and that wasn't that popular back then.
No.
That was more rare. Now it's more popular. People are starting to realize what it is. But back then, that wasn't that popular.
No, I actually got lucky, JC. My mom. So I was the oldest of 4 kids. And after I left the house, my mom went back to school. So I was living in Florida. My mom went back to school. She became a therapist. And so she was becoming a therapist at the same time I was living in Florida and running my business. And then she started doing EMDR. She was one of the first therapists in Southern California to do it.
Wow.
Recommended I do it. And I found a guy named Tom Bealey in Florida that had been trained by the person who invented it.
Wow.
So, and since then, I've probably worked with, 7 or 8 different practitioners since then. But I've recommended, so I'll share a quick story with you. So when I was 32 years old, or 31 or 32. It was about 6 years after I started doing EMDR. I was finishing being a consultant. I was wrapping down my company. I was actually selling it. And a good friend of mine was in town who was one of the people I represented. So he was a client and a friend. And we were driving, I think, from Fort Lauderdale to Miami. And he shared with me in a conversation that he had suicidal thoughts a few weeks before. Here's what I know when somebody shares suicidal thoughts a few weeks before. It's not a few weeks before. They're just saying that to make it easier.
Yeah.
And so we started talking about it and we had this long conversation. And in that conversation, I said, I've been seeing a therapist for 6 years. I was terrified to say it. I was in an industry where you didn't show weakness. I was a consultant. You didn't show weakness. You didn't show vulnerability. You didn't say anything was wrong. Like you showed up in the right way. You nobody else ever knew your problems. Like all of those things. So the shields I had were a mile high. And I told him about it. And about 2 weeks later, he called and said, Alex, you got to start telling people about this. Like I've been 3 or 4 times and it's completely changed everything. I feel so much better. Like I'm so glad I was with you that day. And since then, I've shared with thousands of people in my podcast, when I speak, when I go out to events, I always, not always, but a lot of times I'll bring up EMDR. And I can't tell you how many people have reached out and said like, hey, I finally did this and it just completely changed my life.
Wow, man, if you're listening right now, I just want to let you know there's hope. There is hope. There is hope. Man, you're listening and watching 2 guys right now that have been able to overcome. Alex is being very vulnerable with you. Being bullied as a kid, overcoming obviously an identity crisis. What did he do? He got help. Some of my story, and a lot of people, if you're listening, my story. But when I threw away my basketball opportunity from New Jersey to play basketball in Oklahoma at the Division I level, and a young girl got pregnant, and I ended up throwing away my story was to play basketball, get to that next level, rescue my mom and sister from that poverty-stricken life. And what happens when you throw your story away? It can take you to a dark place like it did me. And I ended up, in a fight in my life to be a dad, married, divorced in 6 months at 20 years old, and then in a custody battle for 8 years, suicidal, depressed, oppressed, so much tremendous guilt and shame. Like you said, as men, Alex, and entrepreneurs, I think it's both. But as men, a lot of times we have the pressure of the world on our shoulders. We have to perform. And we are told, man, you better be macho. You better man up. Like, you don't show weakness, and I was always the emotional one growing up. My mom would always be like, it's all right to cry. It's all right to do that. And I think for me, it's one of the reasons I can attract the people I attract and be able to help the people I can, because I don't care to be macho all the time, man. I don't care to be the tough guy all the time. And I want to be the guy that can walk up to you and hug you and get a deep conversation. And people say, sometimes that's why people stay away from me, because they're like, oh man, if you interact with JC too long, he's going to get deep on you. He's not a surface level guy. He's not going to ask you how the weather is. And like, he's going to ask you about your problems and your situations. So, what would you say to that person right now that's going through the identity crisis, that might be an entrepreneur, a man, and you always talk about lowering the pressure and noise, Alex, and that's one of the things that help a lot of entrepreneurs. But what would you say to that gentleman right now, that man that's out there struggling, just maybe they have suicidal thoughts, maybe they have the pressure of trying to perform financially, physically, mentally in a marriage, and they're dealing with a lot of pressure and noise right now, and they turned in this podcast today for a reason. What would you say to that individual besides get help, obviously, like you did with a therapist? What else would you say to that individual, Alex, to lower the pressure and noise in their life?
I would say that if you look throughout history and you study enough wildly, incredibly successful human beings, here's what you'll find. Here's the equation we are taught to understand, is that successful people have this magical thing that they do, and then they're successful and they're better than all of us, and they're better and they do great things, and it's just not true. If you study successful people throughout history, which I've obsessively studied human beings because I didn't think I would ever be successful. And what you find, if you're willing to go through people's lives, and if you look at a couple hundred, you start seeing patterns, but they look different. And if you look at a few hundred more, you start seeing even more patterns. And if you look at a few thousand, you start seeing clearer patterns. And here's the reality. Successful people throughout history are those who always, always have experienced the frustration, the constraint, the cognitive dissonance of not feeling like they were doing what they were supposed to be doing. Successful people throughout history, incredible entrepreneurs throughout history, have experienced frustration and agitation and cognitive dissonance and suicidal ideation and action. When we look at some of the most incredible human beings in the world in the past, they started out as some of the most challenged. And so if you're feeling those feelings of challenge, if you're feeling those feelings of constraint, if you're feeling like you can't make it to the next level or you can't go forward and you don't know how, here's something I want you to understand, is that even though the path looks so difficult, and the bridge here is so weird to see, and it might be obscured and even ambiguous, the reality is, if you're having those feelings, you are one of us. And all that means is that as soon as you start understanding how to translate those feelings into action, you will move forward. You will create the life you want. You will be able to make what you want to have happen, because people throughout the world, just like you and I, always have. And if you are feeling those feelings right now, I want you to go through a mental exercise with me and think about the history that you've read about, the people you've read about. Think about the people who call out to you, the ones that you related to, the ones that instantly you thought, that guy's kind of like me. I remember reading that Edison was sent home from school for being dumb. That guy was like me. Yeah. Einstein failed algebra twice. That guy was like me. Oprah Winfrey was picked on and bullied and molested and left for dead. Like, man, she had it worse than me.
Come on.
And when I look through those lives and I think of the people who I remember, the people who call out to me, here's what I know. And here's what I want you to know, is they were just like us. And it doesn't matter what you're going through, what disease, what diagnosis, what problem, what issue, what challenge, whatever is facing you, someone just like us has been there, has overcome it, and has gone on to face the world. And you can too, and you can change it. You can change the world. You can make the future you want. And you can overcome whatever's going on, because people like you and I have throughout history. In fact, that defines who we are. And don't forget it.
Man, powerful. Yeah, and if you're listening, you heard Alex just say you're not alone. Many of you on this podcast that listen, that watch, you may know who Alex is, you may not know. We're going to get a little into now what he does and the impacts he's been able to have. But before we do go there, I have a tattoo, Alex, and it says paint of purpose. And I think what you just said, the last part of that is powerful, because I'll never forget when I was at my lowest point in life, I read in a book, Tony Robbins' book, and it said the meaning of anything in life only has the meaning you choose to give it, right? And it's perspective. So many times as human beings, we create a story around the situation, the circumstance, what happened to us, and we make it so much bigger than this. We magnify it. And I think the big thing right now, if you're listening, you can recreate and create a new story for your life. You're looking at a guy that's done it. You're looking at another guy that's done it, if you know my story. But the meaning of anything in life only is the meaning you choose to give it. And if you can shift that perspective, create a new identity in who you were born to be, who you are, and who you can become, you could, just like me, right, take your most painful moment, right, most painful moment, And then that becomes your purpose. What you look for is what you'll find. If you stay focused on the problems, the trials, the storms, the adversity, you will never get out of it. But if you can see beyond it and know that there's something greater and keep fighting, get the help you need, get in an environment and community, and that's what we're talking about now, around the right people that are winning, you can win and will win. And that's what I want to talk about now, Alex, the community that you created, the momentum, your podcast, the Billionaire Code. So one of the things that was intriguing to me, because your avatar, who you serve predominantly as entrepreneurs, when I was sitting at the ClickFunnels, same event, you did a presentation on stage and you went through the stages of an entrepreneur. And to break that down, how eloquently you did, and still how deep you did, everybody in the room was silent. Like, I was looking around, I'm like, there are so many people in here that can resonate with this message. I felt it in my gut. And what you've built this mission on and the movement that you've created now is about helping entrepreneurs understand, like, the pressure noise we go through. You're not alone, like we talked about earlier, but also providing a blueprint, a course, a solution, a community. And you help not only entrepreneurs build the life they were born to live through building teams and scalable systems, but also through self-care. Yeah. Right. And that was one of the things that was intriguing to me. So, man, I just want you to freestyle right now and tell everybody what you're doing, what the mission is of the Billionaire Code, and just break it down for the people that don't know who you are and what you do. And I'm going to be honest with you, I almost didn't want you to have me on the podcast because you're my secret weapon, bro. Like, I don't want to give away a secret weapon. Like, I don't, because I've been running businesses now and I've been an entrepreneur. And just when I came across you at the ClickFunnels, I came back to be in Deidre, my partner in one of the businesses, the consulting and marketing business. And I was like, man, this is exactly what we need. Like, we have the passion, we have the clients, we have the team, but the one thing we're missing is the systems. And this guy breaks it down like nobody's ever seen. And I kind of don't want to give it all away, but if you're an entrepreneur out there right now, like, and you don't take advantage of what Alex is doing to build your company, to increase your systems, your processes, your team, you're missing out. There's nobody better. He's a secret weapon, not only in my life, but many other entrepreneurs' lives. Actually coached Russell Brunson and ClickFunnels and many other entrepreneurs. My friend Alex Hormozy, who's built, I don't even know if it's $100 million business by now.
Probably is now.
Yeah. So just tell everybody what you're doing, man, and the mission and the movement that you've created and what you're on right now, because it's absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, you got it. So, man, I feel incredibly fortunate. It feels like everything I've ever done has led up to right now. And I feel like that's such a blessed and incredible and ridiculous place to be. I feel like I can reach back into any experience I've had in my life and use it in my current life, because what we're doing now is we help entrepreneurs with the structure, process, and routine so that they can create success. And here's the issue for most entrepreneurs is that we know we need structure, process, and routine, but we go out and we get it, and then we try and use it. And like, most structures, most processes, most systems out there are so difficult for us to understand because of the way we think that we can't use them. They're made for the rest of the world. And quite frankly, they make us feel a little slow or dumb or frustrated or irritated, or they don't work. Have you had that experience, JC?
Oh, man. You said something at the conference where you were like, something about Basecamp and all these other things. And you were like, we use Google Sheets, we use Google Drive. I'm like, this is my guy. No, fuck. There's a lot of companies, entrepreneurs, you get so overwhelmed and you're stuck trying to get these systems in place that you lose focus of the vision, and you can't train a team because you're trying to get the team trained up on how to do the systems so that they can do what they need to do. I mean, yeah. 100%.
So my whole life, when I was running businesses, I used to have consultants and coaches and authors and stuff. They would say this phrase to me, Alex, you've got to stop working in your business and start working on your business. And JC, every time somebody said that, I swear I wanted to turn around and punch them in the face. Because what does that even mean? It's so annoying and it's so theoretical and it's so hollow. What do you mean work in your business, not on your business? Where's the rule book? Where's the guidebook? How does this work? And, I struggled through it. I struggled through it over and over and over again. And I obsessively studied, like, how do you do that? And so here's what we do today. We have this phrase, minimum effective dose. This is a phrase that we took from pharmacology, where the minimum effective dose for any drug is exactly as much as you need, but no more, so it doesn't create a side effect. And when it comes to structure, process, and routine, here's what we know. The minimum effective dose is always the most effective. And it's always the most valuable. And so what we do as a company is we show entrepreneurs how to plan their personal lives and how to execute, how to plan in their relationships and how to execute, and then how to build empires and how to execute. And here's what I think makes us different than the rest of the world is that the process, the structure, routine that we use personally, relationship wise, and in business, it's all the same. 90% of the coaching we do is in business, but the people who come to us for business end up doing our personal coaching. They end up doing the relationship coaching, and it's holistic, because here's the reality about working as an entrepreneur. You are the most important person in your success.
Yeah.
And everybody can't say that. Like, let's be honest. If you work for somebody else, like that person has a lot to do with your success. But entrepreneurs, like, you're the most important person in the business. You're the most important person there is in that business. So if we can improve your efficiency and your effectiveness, if we can get you in your body and more present and more aware, if we can lower the pressure and noise like crazy, you show up different and your entire world changes. And JC, we get some crazy results. Like you mentioned Alex and Layla Hormozi. When I started working with them, by the way, two of the most incredible and intelligent and unreal entrepreneurs I've never been around. Individually, they're incredible. Together, it's like unfair. And it really is. And we started working together. I think they were just under $2 million a year. And about 18 months later, they were at about 40 million and 120 people. They went from 3 to 120 people and 2 to 40 million. I think they're going to be the fastest growing company in the country. The way we did that was with process, structure, and routine. And when there's exponential growth like that, you need process, structure, and routine even more.
Man, I love it. I'm just, if you're listening right now, a lot of what we do behind the scenes in our company, we utilize the Billionaire Code. We utilize the systems. We're not perfect at it. And I'll say that, like,
nobody has to be.
And I think that's the greatest part about it. Like, it's so simple to implement that you don't have to be perfect about it, but it's still going to move the needle. You're still going to increase revenue if that's what your goal is. But for us, most importantly, it gave us peace of mind to have a structure in place. I mean, you call it the cadence, right? The cadence. When you have a cadence in place, how you communicate with your internal team, 5 core functions of a business, things you're measuring, like, how we measure our stuff now. I think it's just incredible how much structure it brought. But here's what it did most importantly. You talk about that old saying, and that used to drive me crazy as well, because I would get so frustrated. Stop working in your business, you work on your business. And I'm like, how do you do that? And it really has done that for us, right?
Yeah.
Because, and you say it a little different, and it's structured maybe a little different, but what you had us all do is fill out a time study. And it's 2 weeks, and you had us break down time studies to say, let's look at really where you're at in life. You cannot change anything without awareness. Where are you spending your time, JC, that you don't need to be spending your time? And you're working on all this tactical stuff, and you can't work on the strategical stuff. And that was for the first time in my life where I really understood the power, and I understood that statement that so many people made to me that you said earlier that you want to punch them in the face.
Right.
Wait a second. For the first time in my life, I'm understanding that I'm going to be able to work on the business and not in the business anymore. So most importantly, it's freed me up to be able to do what I feel I'm called to do more, because now we have a team and we have systems and we have processes, and it's made the team excited and motivated. And then the last final thing I'll say is, we've grown like crazy and made more money if that's what you want to do. Like, and we contribute a lot of that to the process and systems that we put in place with you, man.
And here's the other thing that happens. Like, see if this resonates, JC. When you put process, structure, and routine in place, here's what happens. We think as entrepreneurs that process, structure, and routine is going to constrain us. Some of us have memories of being in school and having the bell go off, and we don't want the structure. Some of us don't want something on our calendar every day. Some of us don't want to be in a meeting every week. But here's what happens. When we're willing to accept minimal discomfort, like being in a meeting and meeting with our team and showing up in the right ways, minimal process creates massive freedom. It's what we really want. Has that done that for you, JC?
Huge.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, the other thing it's done, and you talk about meetings, is, it actually made meetings productive.
Right.
We don't view them and look at them as meetings anymore, right?
They're targeted interactions.
They're targeted interactions. And everybody has a role, and everybody has a position, and you have an agenda, and there's executive summary, and people know exactly what we're going to knock out in that time frame. It's not like, let's just meet again to meet. It's not draining. It's light. It's fun. You look forward to them. 100%, man. Yeah.
Here's what I always tell entrepreneurs, and this happens a lot. By the way, if you're listening to this and you're like, man, I can't stand meetings with my team. Like, it's frustrating. It's hard. By the way, that's 99% of entrepreneurs out there. And that's how it is. A lot of us for a lot of my career, I thought I was going to always dread walking into meetings with my team. I used to work on priming, like Tony Robbins talks about priming. I used to have priming documents because I hated my team meetings so much. I would like read a document that said, you're a good person. You're going to be okay. You'll like this, you can pull them together. Like I had to talk myself into meetings. Now, my wife and I are on vacation. I'm doing this podcast and I'm seeing my therapist today. That's it. And this morning I missed my team huddle. I'm like, I kind of want to be on the huddle. And they sent a recording over of it. And I was driving to a friend of mine's house to go work out and actually watch part of the recording. I'm like watching on my day off, I'm watching a team meeting. And whenever I do that, I'll be like watching, I'll go, yeah, this is what I tell entrepreneurs about. It's like, once you have the systems in place, time with your team feels like momentum. JC, it's not just me. We had this, I think you met Wallace and Ashlyn Nelson maybe in our program. Such incredible human beings. When I first met Wallace, he's like, dude, I looked at your stuff. We're joining, but man, all the meetings, are you kidding me? He's like, I think I saw a daily thing on there. And I'm like, Wallace, just trust the process and then come to me in 3 months and tell me what you think. So the next time I saw him was at a ClickFunnels event. And we were both in the room and I saw him get up and walk out and I'm like, what's up, Wallace? And he bailed. And then he came back. And like at one of the breaks, I walked up to him. I'm like, man, where were you? And no, I didn't ask him. He actually came charging up to me. He's like, dude, when you waved to me, I was going out to get on my huddle. I just couldn't miss it. He's like, I missed it yesterday and I felt off all day. So I had to be on my huddle. So here's a guy that's like, no way, I can't do it. Because here's what you realize as an entrepreneur. You show up to the huddle, you're there with your team. They're motivated. They're excited. They're into it for the day. And that is engagement. That is connection. That is relationship. That is you showing that you're the leader of that team. And the leverage you get out of it is insane.
It's huge. It's absolutely huge. And then the other thing, obviously, is how you measure stuff in a business. I think you broke it down where there's just 5 things. So you're not overwhelmed with all these process systems. It's just 5 things. If we can move the needle and measure those on a weekly and monthly basis, we're going to win. So how big's your team now, Alex?
So right now we have 10 on salary, and then with contractors and everybody else, probably around 25.
And how many companies and businesses, entrepreneurs have you been blessed to help to date now? Just over the last, how long has this company been in place?
So we just restarted this company in 2016, and we've probably had around 400 or 500 clients or 500 members. But in our last business, this was a real estate company. So we started the Certified Distressed Property Expert designation in 2007. And in that business, we had just under 50,000 members. We did about 70 million, and we were the 21st fastest growing company in the United States. So this business, we're in our 2nd year, and we're hoping to get back on the list year after next.
Come on, baby. And I think you think you said, if you're an entrepreneur listening right now, I think the thing that you said that was most intriguing is this statement. I'm supposed to be on vacation right now. I'm on vacation right now. I'm doing this podcast, and I thank you for that. And then also, I'm going to meet with my therapist. But how many entrepreneurs cannot leave to go on vacation because they're worried, concerned, what's going to go on with the business? Is the business going to be okay? Is it going to survive? Are the right people in place? I think to have that relief as an entrepreneur, if you're listening right now and you run a business, probably 9 out of 10 entrepreneurs that I know do not have that peace of mind. When they go on vacation, they're worried, they can't turn it off, they're thinking about everything going on. And I'm like, I'm going on vacation. Peace out. Like, I'll see you in a week. So,
well, I've got a better story about that, JC.
Turn that off, Alex. That's a big problem. Entrepreneurs can't do that. And you help entrepreneurs do that, brother.
Well, yeah. And I actually have a lot more a lot more dramatic story, I guess, about that. And I think it's one that really bears being shared.
Bring it.
Last year, my mom died. My family and I were in Hawaii, and I got a call. My mom had a stroke, and she was in the hospital and being rushed to emergency surgery to remove part of her skull because her brain was expanding in her head. And we ended up having to leave Hawaii. We were in Hawaii 2 days. We left. We went back to Southern California. As my mom is in surgery, my friend Sean Stevenson fell out of his wheelchair, hit his head, and died overnight. So I lost one of the closest people in the world to me, Sean. And then a few days later, it was my mom. She survived the craniectomy, but there was complications a few days later. She started bleeding and she was gone. And that day, I had to get real with the fact that I had convinced myself my mom was never going to die. I thought like there was no way, like I'm different or something. I had this unrealistic belief that it was never going to happen. And I was confronted with the fact that it did that day. And our business was in a huge growth curve, getting just over 2 million right around that time. And I called Haley, our operator, and I said, my mom's passed away. I'm going to take some time off and I'll let you know when I'm coming back. I don't know when that's going to be. But it's going to be at least the next couple of weeks, probably 3. And I don't want to be bothered at all. Like I need to go get space and time. I need to process this. I don't know. Like everything feels wrong right now. And I left. I didn't warn my team. I didn't tell them it was coming. We had our systems, our structure, the cadence was there, and I turned it over to them. And in about a 6-week period, it wasn't 2 or 3 weeks. It took me a lot longer than that. It ended up being a total of about 6 weeks that I was away from my team completely. I think in that time, I answered 1 or 2 Boxer messages, 1 or 2 text messages. When I finally came back, my team had grown the company about 15%. We had gone forward just like we wanted to. The things that we wanted to have achieved were achieved. And I came back to a business that not only was not on fire, it was doing incredibly well. And I could walk back in and get back into my position and start leading the team again. And, you know, I feel like the systems we have are so important because they've helped so many people. But in that time frame, I realized just how much of a gift the systems we have are for me, like how much they've changed my life and who I am. Because JC, there was a time in my life where if somebody close to me passed away, I would have just buried myself in work and stuffed it down. And you know what happens if you stuff it down, it's coming out later. It's just, you don't know when and you don't know how and you can't control it. And I would have, you know, never let them see me sweat and shown up every day and done all the stuff that, you know, the good entrepreneur does. But because I took the time and the space to process and be able to get back to who I really am, it allowed me to come back and lead my team and lead our members and lead in a way that I feel is so much more congruent because I'm being true to who I am. And having a team in place, having a system in place to run that team, having a structure in place, it doesn't just protect you like when you need to leave, it protects your team from you. Because as an entrepreneur, you know, your team needs to be able to show you what they're doing. They need to be able to show you what's going on. You need to be able to have a system and a structure that makes things clear. And when you do, that's when time with your team will give you momentum. But that's also when having a business will actually feel like freedom, and not the fake freedom of flying around with a laptop and doing everything yourself, but the freedom of being able to say, I need some time at a major life event. I'll see you when I see you, and please make sure the company is okay, and coming back to not only it being okay, but doing better than it was before.
Wow, man. I'm so grateful. Thank you for being transparent and vulnerable and sharing that. Man, it's been such a gift for me as well, brother. I know it's been a gift to so many other entrepreneurs and businesses. And when you were talking, I just felt something just in my spirit to tell you, man, like, I don't even know, and I hope you do understand the impact that you have on human beings, not just businesses. You might not hear it all the time. You might hear it sometimes, but I think the impact that you have on people is so much bigger than just helping them scale a business. And I don't even feel like what you've done till this point is even the tip of what's about to go on. I feel like exponential growth, and I don't say growth just in a financial growth in business. I say growth in the impact that you're going to have. And when you were talking, it just, something stirred up in me just to say, keep going. Like when you don't feel like doing a podcast, do it. When you don't feel like having a meeting, have a meeting. I just feel like you're on the brink of something that's so big that people need, because there is a gift inside of you that when that's transferred, I genuinely feel like you're changing and saving lives. And the gift that you have is way bigger than scaling a business. It's about transforming a life. So, man, my encouragement for you, man, is, you know, just put it on steroids. Be more intentional. Turn it up even more. Be even more intense in who you are in your mission, your movement. And I just feel like something even bigger is about to break open for you that you maybe not even seen or even imagined or dreamed of, brother, because you have a huge calling on your life. And this is just the beginning for you, man. So I'm blessed. I'm honored. I know time is valuable, and I want to respect your time. For the entrepreneur out there, and I say this entrepreneur, but also the self-care side of stuff that you have going on, that's intriguing to me because that's the industry I'm in, the personal development. I love how you tie that in. Mm-hmm. I needed the business stuff. I needed the entrepreneur stuff. I needed the processes and that stuff. but I've dabbled in the other side of it. And I love that as well. So what would you say to an individual that's out there right now that needs the help as an entrepreneur to scale their business, to help their team, to create that freedom financially, that peace of mind that you just talked about? What's the first step they need to do? And I want them to direct them, where do they need to go first? Is it what website, what book, your podcast, the course? What do they need to do immediately, man, to take action?
I think the podcast is the best place because it's free and you can start right now. If you go to momentumpodcast.com, or if you look for the Momentum Podcast for the Entrepreneurial Personality Type on iTunes or on any of the major platforms, it's there. So search on Momentum, you'll find it. And then I wrote a book called The Entrepreneurial Personality Type. I think you've read it, JC. It describes what I believe is the most overlooked and most important subpopulation in humanity, the entrepreneurs. And I want to make it clear, I'm not talking about business owners. See, I think a lot of people confuse that with, because I use the word entrepreneurs, I probably confused it. Here's who it really is. It's the game changers, the people who want to take the shot, the people who are the artists, the creatives, the people who make things happen, who want to change the world, who want to change the status quo, the people who experience the restless frustration of things not happening fast enough. And that book explains to us who we are. And it's interesting, you said, earlier, there's nothing wrong with you. One of our marketing slogans is, there is nothing wrong with you and you are not alone. And if you go to free Momentum book, you can buy a copy, or you can get a copy of the Entrepreneurial Personality Type. It's set up for free. You just pay shipping and handling. And I'd love to have you read it.
Man, I love it. In the beginning, we said our winning confession, our win all day winning confession. I'll never forget when you were challenged on stage to say the Client-Centric Mission. Entrepreneur Client-Centric Mission. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You
want me to share it with you?
Sharing that as we close this show with the family on the Win All Day family?
Sure. So we have this concept that we call the Client-Centric Mission, and we feel like it should be your elevator pitch. We feel like it should be what you tell people when they ask you what you do in business. We feel like it should be the thing that you share all the time. And it's 4 simple questions. Who are you going to help? How are you going to help them? What's the change you are going to make? And how will you know you're successful? So for me, it sounds like this. We help visionary entrepreneurs who can't turn it off and want to make a contribution just as much as they want to make a living by showing them the systems, the process, and the tools to be able to build a team, get into momentum, and build an empire. And the change we want to make is that entrepreneurs know they can get the help they need and change the world like they want to. And we will know we're successful when every visionary entrepreneur who wants to go out and build a company to change the world can get the help they need, and they're able to do it.
Come on, baby. That's Alex, the man himself. That alone right there, for a business owner, for an entrepreneur, for somebody that's looking to scale their business, that part alone of what we learn can change the entire trajectory because it brings clarity. And it's a hard exercise to go through in the beginning. But when you have clarity on that, you speak with confidence, you sell with confidence, you lead your team with confidence because you know who you are, what you guys are about, and you know how you deliver your product and service. So I appreciate you sharing that. Any closing thoughts to the viewers and listeners of the Win All Day podcast show as we conclude this episode with you, the one and only Mr. Alex Charfen?
Yeah, you know what? I think that if there was one parting thing, you mentioned it earlier, JC, the world is incredibly noisy right now. It's noisier than it's ever been, and I'm 47 years old. It's like crazy how much is going on. And for us as entrepreneurial personality types, for us as the people who are more sensitive, we see more opportunity, we feel more, we hear more, we understand more of what's going on. The key for us in a time like this is to lower the pressure and noise in our lives. And you have to be relentless. That means looking at the people, the places, the things in your life. And if they're not giving you momentum, they are taking them away, and they're taking it away. And you can't allow it. See, there's 2 ways to get into momentum for people like us. And that's what we live for. We live for that state of momentum. It's where we feel the most alive. We can either go and do all the work it takes to get up into forward progress and move forward, or we can drop a bunch of the stuff that's holding us in place, and then we just naturally go faster. So the easiest way to move forward when the world is like this is to lower the noise in your life, to look at what you're doing, to make sure that you are moving yourself in the right direction. And when you lower the pressure and noise in your life, everything gets easier and you will get into momentum.
Wow. Come on, brother. One more time, name of the podcast.
momentumpodcast.com, and it's momentum for the entrepreneurial personality type.
It's an absolutely phenomenal. It's one of the best podcasts out there, without a doubt, for entrepreneurs. And then where can they find the book one more time?
freemomentumbook.com. Just pay shipping. We'll ship a copy of it out to you. And I would love to know what you think.
Alex Charfen, we're grateful for you. Much love. We're believing for the best for you. Thank you so much for sowing seeds into the Win All Day family. And if you're listening or watching today, man, who loves you? I love you. One last time, I want to remind you before we conclude this show, you were born a winner, so go win and win all day.